morning. I am Dimple of Nesamani Memorial Christian College. A very warm good morning and warm welcome to one and all present here. On behalf of PG Department of English, Nesamani Memorial Christian College, Marthandam, I would like to welcome the resource persons, chairpersons, faculty, and participants to the second day of International Conference on American Literature through virtual mode. It's my privilege to introduce our resource person, Dr. Ruchi Raj Thakur. She is working as Assistant Professor of English at Himachal Pradesh National Law University, Shimla. She has published many research papers in national online and offline journals. She has also presented paper in several national and international conferences organized in India. She has translated a book originally written in Hindi which is titled Adivasi Abhiyukti, Woes of Adivasi, a long expression of unacknowledged tribal existence. She has also worked as a counselor at Indira Gandhi National Open University. She is also a member of Advisory Board Avasti Group of Institutions. She has been the co-coordinator of the Center for Children's and Women's Study at Himachal Pradesh National Law University. We are so delighted with your presence in this online session. Now, the platform is over to Dr. Ruchi Raj Thakur. Please, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dimple. I'm so glad and I'm so overwhelmed to hear so much. But that makes me realize that yet to do, I've yet to achieve more. Thank you so much for offering me this platform to share my views about magical realism. And I'll be talking about Gaiman, an American fantasy writer or a writer or a magic realist writer. I'm very sorry, my throat is really bad. So I really hope, I apologize if I jar upon your ears. So I would like to take a minute to share the slides with you, my PPT with you. Just give me a minute. I hope I hope the slide is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please
All right,
continue.
all right. These technical glitches could be all right. I know the title of my presentation is too big, but I'm thinking of covering all these aspects which Neil Gaiman has talked about in his novels. So the topic says magical realism in Neil Gaiman's novels, myths versus conflicting truths in modern times in American Gods, identity and in Carolyn, and the Graveyard's Book, becoming and unbecoming through the newness of life in Stardust. Starting with what is magical realism. Magical and realism. Two different words juxtaposing. Magical is believed to be implausible, it is believed to be unbelievable. And then realism, I mean, that is so very close to the brutalities of life, or it is too very true to life itself. And life is definitely not very, I mean, of course it is resplendent, but I mean, it is a mixture of sorrows and joys. We learn, we unlearn, and I mean, it is so experimenting. So magical realism speaks about it takes us to a world which could be fantastical, or which could be magical, yet it talks about events that are too very true to life. So magical realism, this concept or this genre in adults literature is not new, but in children's juvenile literature is, because we talk about fantasy, we talk about fancies, we talk about imagination, we talk about, we talk about fairies and all those angels, ghosts and all those things. But this uh, this growing application of fantasy by modern writers of fiction may depend upon two main reasons. Why do writers write? They either write because they intend towards a specific goal, or they write just for the sake of narration. And we know why writers write. There are different, there are diverse or distinct reasons which which compel a writer to write. However, the reasons could be varied, but behind one's writing, fantasy fiction, fantasy myths, legends, and folklore have attracted these writers, and induced in them keenness to depict such world which takes them to a world of fantasy and magic, with the consciousness of the reality. They do not, cannot negate the presence of the real. They cannot negate, or they cannot defy the presence of their surroundings. So their surroundings, their present, cannot be ignored. What exactly is magical realism? Magical realism is one of the most unique literary movements of this century. Interestingly, most commonly associated with Latin America, authors, writers from all over the world have made big contributions to the genre. Magical realism is a genre of literature that depicts the real world as having an undercurrent of magic or fantasy. Magical realism is a part of realism genre of fiction. Within a work of magical realism, the world is still grounded in the real world. But fantastical elements are considered normal in this world. Like fairy tales, magical realism, novels, and short stories blur the line between fantasy and reality. And my dear learners, we are going to accentuate upon this theme, that how the hiatus between, or how the gap between fantasy and reality gets filled, or it gets blurred. So we are going to talk about the works of Neil Gaiman, who has experimented with with this genre, or he has tried to add new vistas to the literary discussions or deliberations. Talking about the history of magical realism. The term magister realismus, which translates to magic realism, was originally used in 1925 by German art critic Franz Roh in his book Expressionismus, Magister Realismus, after Expressionism, magical realism in English. He used the term to describe the new Satchlik or new objectivity, a style of painting that was popular in Germany at the time, that was an alternative to the romanticism of expressionism. Let's, I mean, I would like to speak before we actually go deeper into into this genre. I would like to take you back to slide 3, where I try to put magical realism in, succinctly or lucidly before my lovely audience. So, magical realism talks about real events, but also includes wonderful or unreal issues that the characters perceive in a natural and everyday way, or everyday life. The main characteristic of magical realism is the alteration of reality with fantastic actions, which are the art is that they are blended together and they are narrated in a realistic way, assuming the acceptance of these facts as real and true, both for the protagonist as well as for the readers. I mean, when we chew every bite of a fantastical or a magical realist novel, we thoroughly enjoy, the blend of the real with the unreal, or vice versa. Uh, it narrates the unreal as something everyday, and the story itself breaks into a known reality. Taking you further to the evolution or to the genesis of magical realism, uh, I've already told you that this concept was given to us, or this genre was has come from Germany. The emergence of magical realism has also its roots in American continent, because from Germany it it shifted, or it spread to Latin America, uh, and to the complete American continent later. In to uh, to delve deep into this concept, the evolution of magical realism has been divided into three as per its location and periods. First, as I've already apprised you, in Germany 1920, in Central America in 1940, and then Latin America starting from 1955. The movement arose in a social context characterized by civil wars, originally. The other reasons were great social differences, hostilities, and search for independence, freedom, autonomy, etc. And it turned out to be a way of creating beauty and magic in the midst of a widespread unease. We are all familiar with the dreadful or horrendous two world wars. So, because this is very close to postmodern, this has its association with postmodernism. So, obviously, it is talking about the dreadful, the horrendous, the catastrophic world wars and the aftermath of the two. The rise of this movement lasted even during the period of the Latin America boom between 1960 and 70. Moving further, uh, give me a minute. Who are the pioneers? These are the pioneers, the writer George Louis Boggs, who is considered the main representative in laying the foundation of magical realism in Latin America, followed by Isabel Allende, Joan Rulfo, Miguel Angel Austrius, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Elena Garro, Romulo. I'm very sorry. I might go a little. I may mispronounce the proper nouns. Gallios, among others. What are the characteristics of magical realism? Let's quickly go through the details, the nitty-gritties of which go with the genre, and then we'll talk about the works. What are the characteristics of magical realism? As I've already told you, that it blends. It is a juxtaposition of real with unreal, where a fantasy and irrational events, or sorry, fantastical and irrational events to go with the realistic setup or ambience. Uh, the naturalness or normality of certain phenomena, which is not the same as replacing the reality with the fantastic world. The distortion in time, the chronology, the sequence of time may get distorted, may get may reverse or may not follow. This may get disturbed in the narration. So there might be, you may feel that, the standard pattern of starting the plot and then discussing the plot and then coming to the conclusion, uh, gets missed sometimes. And it combines stories and fantasies to reveal aspects of society and human nature. When it is talking about, now, did you notice that it has specifically society and human nature have been mentioned here? When it comes to society, it it is a rendezvous to with reality. That means we will have a tete-a-tete with the reality. That means we are going to have, a discourse with reality. So we cannot say that magical realism is nothing but fantasy. No, because it is talking about the real events, taking them to an unreal environment. All right. Sorry. Yeah. Uh, I've taken this from Neil Gaiman's book, Carolyn. Um and this is an epigraph by G.K. Chesterton. And he says, fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. And I think this fantasy or magic or, fairy tales uh, do have it. We have, it is up to the audience or to the readers, how do they perceive, or how do they interpret, or how do they analyze a text. So some would just try to extract the implied meaning. Some would read it just for the heck of it. And some, just to enjoy reading. And some would try to understand each and every word related to it. They will try to get, extract some learning out of the writing. So it is very true that we teach or we narrate fairy tales to children so that they understand what is right and what is wrong. They can clearly say no to the wise, and they could accept the virtues. And I think even when somebody has grown up and has come under, you has joined the category of adult, sometimes we really need to go through such books, because sometimes we completely forget what could be virtuous and what could not be. The good and bad demarcation difference sometimes gets fades away with time, because we all are running in the race of Darwin's survival for the fittest. So we might, in the world of competition, we might forget. All right. Until 20th century, magical realism was considered to be an immature form of literature. But the popularity of Tolkien's The Hobbit and the famous trilogy of The Lord of the Rings, magical realism began to be accepted as something meaningful for adult readership. So this is what I was talking about. Now, what is Neil Gaiman's purpose of writing? He's very clear. He wants to, bring something more. What we gather from fairy tales or fantasy, he's trying to give us more. He's trying to add more to it. So, in his works, you will find that there is an element of supernaturalism, but you will find a beautiful and artistic interplay of real and unreal. He would amalgamate mystic and fantastic and reproduces an authentic mythological material that is wholly real despite its use of implausible. We'll talk about it. Whatever I'm saying, I will justify. His works have been appreciated because of his ability to restore the nonsense form by recreating it for modern readers. Through his works, he has efficiently revived the lost glory of children's literacy heritage and have added a new meaning in adult readership arena too. About Neil Gaiman, his biography. He began writing in the mid 1980s, and over the span of his now 30-year long career as a professional writer, he has written fairy tales, children's books, comic books, science fiction scripts for television programs, as well as big budget Hollywood films. American God is one of the famous web series you find on Amazon. Stardust is a movie in an animated form. Carolyn is another beautiful movie in an animated form. So you can, I mean, if ever you get time, just do watch it. Okay, based on legendary Anglo-Saxon heroes, his novels contain several folkloric and mythological figures, ranging from angels to misplaced ancient deities. We are going to talk about all these. I've further tried to speak about his influences. He was highly influenced by C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and G.K. Chesterton. He grew up reading their works. Later, he developed a penchant for science fiction. He read the works of many famous authors, and these are the names. He began his career as a freelancer writer, he started from comic. He penned down or he wrote comic books. And this won him accolades and became one of the most loved storyteller in America. He began as graphic novel series through television and film scripts. Since then, he continued to work in the field of comics to entice children. Later, he emerged as the finest adult fantasy fiction writer. All right. My slides, my PPT is really small, but I have so much to speak about this writer. There are, as I've told you, he's written. I mean, he has to his account a number of books, but I will be talking about four of them. Starting, I'll be starting from. Um, Let me choose. I mean, all his books are so uh, popular that I sometimes I feel like breaking the sequence. So let me first speak about his novels. In his novels, in almost all his novels, he's tried to explore the fantastical world beyond limits and experimented with numerous themes. And that you could see from the from such a big title I've given to my PPT. His works, like the title, his works are also kaleidoscopic range of themes. In short, the larger portion of Gaiman's fiction is for adults, as it stands on the steady edifice of fantastic by broadly mutually combining immeasurable illusions in order to produce a discourse between fiction and reality. It is about his writings. It is said, or he himself, talks about his writings. He says, mostly I write with me as an audience. Mostly I let publishers figure out who I write something for. I don't think that's my job. My job as a writer is to write and to explode. Consequently, as a result of this, you will see the readers are able to acknowledge their own wakefulness of the anticipated gap between imaginary worlds and their accord with the reality. Magical realism has always told stories about the unbelievable, but something very new has been introduced by Neil Gaiman, and that is the fantasies depict some very sensitive issue from the life itself. Children read text to understand the implied meaning, as I've already discussed. They are considered to be the single audience for a single audience or implied readers. We have another category where work of literature is written for both child and adult. So it becomes a double, it becomes a piece for double audience. And you will find Neil Gaiman's novels fitting well into the second category. He writes for double audience, for child as well as for children as well as adults. Talking about Gaiman's novel, The Graveyard Book. Graveyard Book is such, I will leave it to you to decide whether it would be. I really need to tone down when I'm speaking about this writer. But the novel, The Graveyard Book, written by Gaiman, has in that novel, that novel could be the best example of Neil's capability to skillfully make adolescent literature suitable for the reading quest of adults too. He breaches the very peculiarity of the adolescent literature to make the subjects and characters of his works apposite for adult readers. In his novels, you will find he tries to depict a very serious issue through this fantastical text. We all are bothered by the issue of identity. We want to be known, we want to be recognized, we want to be a face in the crowd. But Gaiman, through this work, has negated the he does not think that one should run after identity. Even by being nobody, you can become somebody. So this is the main issue he has talked about, and he tries to convey that usually man tries to achieve what he does not have. He struggles to accomplish the desires. He creates such a world where the protagonist is aware that the world around him is different, but that does not bother him. In fact, the life of otherness, far away from normal, looks normal to him. And this is, I think, we all are in this race. He does nothing that can change his situation of life. He also conveys that in normal life, people run after one thing or another, but they are dissatisfied. He has ruled out the possibility of one that one must have an identity to live through the Broad is the main character. He's the protagonist of this novel, but he has been named as nobody. And by being nobody, he becomes, he gains recognition. He lives in a graveyard, he grows up there, but he makes his, presence felt all over. People from the real world get to know him. Moving to another novel, I know I really have to rush because I've been given only 30 minutes. Moving to the other novel of of the writer, that is Carolyn. You will find in this novel, Neil Gaiman has talked about something that is so very true to, that is so real. We all are so engrossed in our work. We don't have time for social ties. We don't have time for our family. Uh, this work culture, the imbalance between work life has or you can say work life balance has completely become imbalanced. There is no sync or there is no coordination. What has that done to us? That has made us, that has induced the feeling of boredom in us, that has induced in us the feeling of alienation, loneliness. So all these things have been talked about by the writer. And the uh, the name of the character, Carolyn itself, her heart is filled with boredom because her parents are always occupied in their work, and also they have because they have shifted into a new apartment, due to which Carolyn had to leave her familiar neighbors among whom she had grown up. Loneliness, Neil Gaiman gives us is another very strong message that Neil Gaiman gives through this dark work. The absence of Caroline's parents' attention and involvement in her life. She feels ignored and utterly lonely. Neen has tried to depict the let losing of relational ties in this advanced age of modernity. And you know what? When I read this novel, I felt uh, in COVID, during COVID phase, we all were glued to our computers because a new world had, took us in. The virtual world was offering so much to us seminars, webinars, webinars, e-conferences, e-workshops, FDPs, FIPs, refresher courses, etc. We all managed to do everything by sitting inside our room, but moving to world around or to other places. So in that in that fray, we completely forgot that we are ignoring our family members. uh, we would always be on our laptop doing one thing or the other. So when I read this, I related what Caroline's parents were doing. I could relate it with my life. I said, yes, I mean, many like me must be doing the same. So her parents would always be on computers and telling Carolyn to play outside and not to disturb them because they have so much to do. They need to submit some report or something like that. They were working from home. So this shows that despite being, around our people, we were never with them. Same is true about Carolyn, because she also felt that though her parents were there, they were physically present, but mentally they were not there. So this is, I mean, through this, Neil Gaiman has tried to accentuate, or he has tried to bring to surface the hardcore reality about the working class who are expected to work all time and neglect the home front because they believe that because they believe that they owe their employees as they pay them salary. So this insensitive work culture makes Carolyn feel odd and lonesome. Neil mentions, okay, um, in this novel, he also tries to deal with the theme, uh, uh, such themes which make this novel suitable for adult readership, as the story is narrated by an adult who looks at a child's state through his perspective. The feeling of abandonment is a turning point in the story that creates the two categories, such as literature and adult literature, uh, you know that brings the two literature together. uh, Moving to the third novel, that is Stardust. Stardust underlines the serious threat to the modern age due to the loss of values people ever had. The time has made human beings utterly selfish, and so they have forgotten to respect the boundaries set by others for themselves. He directs our attention to the bitter truth that though most of us know how it feels when the lines drawn are not respected, through the depiction of fairy world as the locale and the portrayal of characters, this writer talks about how one feels when there are, run-ins with consent and boundaries. His fantasy fiction leaves a very important message, which is how important is it to learn to respect other people's boundaries. Another range of themes are freedom and confinement, how people change themselves as per the need, the bindings of rules on us, the marathon to fulfill desires, the relationship to give some to get some, the fragility of love in life, etc. He has also addressed the serious issue of feminism and Orient indifference with Occident. So, can we really call this, when he's talking about such real issues and such, serious issues, how can we call magical realism something which is detached from a reality? A last novel which I would like to talk about is, I would recommend you, it's a very, very bulky novel, but if you read it, I'm sure, you will understand the struggle between religion and science. So he has beautifully talked about the conflict or tug of war between gods and science, logic and rational and spirituality. So American Gods accentuates upon the battle between the old gods and the new gods. Now, who are these old gods? Old gods are the old deities, the mythological figures. But who are the new gods? The new gods are our gadgets, our phones, our laptops, internet, um, tab. All these things are our new gods. So he tries to bridge the old and the new. And he puts across his opinion that if human beings defy the old for the new, their life will become meaningless and mechanical. The technological advancement will devoid itself of moral control, but to change is also the quintessential of advancement and development. Neil, remarks, the old world, a world of infinite uh, vastness and illimitable resources and future, was being confronted by something else, a web of energy, of opinions, of gulfs. He also tries to assert that the hope, our hope does not rest in the world beyond, but or in the world beyond, or in the world to come, but in the world here and now. Our hope is in change, not in an exchange, whether to be an exchange, whether that be an exchange of one world for another or oneself for another. Transformation is the means, not transcendence. He also, through this novel, he also tries to make people understand that not only people but gods also depend upon not only people depend upon god, but gods also depend upon people. Suppose we forget, we don't worship gods anymore, so they will be left abandoned. People repose faith in gods and then they forget. The writer has tried to emphasize that people believe, it's what people do. They believe and then they do not take the responsibility to hold those beliefs. They conjure things and do not trust the conjurations. The writer also tries to bring to fore the truth that not only the old gods, but the new gods are also insecure about their position in the society. That is why from 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G. So, just to be in the market, and from iPhone 6 to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and now 14. So, just to keep their place intact in the market, our new gods are also, they are also bringing new shades of their existence. So the new gods are also insecure about their position in the society. The truth is unzipped by the writer that human beings are fascinated by some big creation because of which the surviving feels ignored, abandoned, or cast aside. Now, the writer tries to put an end to the ongoing debate on the tug of war between the old and the new. He emphasizes that nothing is immortal. Those who come die too. every era witnesses its golden era and its downfall too. In the confrontation between mythology and advancement, Neil believes that both can exist together. For him, belief is essential as it enables the readers to understand what surrounds them. Hence, he ends the debate between the old and the new gods by asserting that unquestionably the influence of old gods is fading with the time, and new gods are bringing a feeling of awe and encouragement. So, I mean, uh, I when I looked at Carolyn or Stardust, American Gods, or for that matter, the Graveyard's book, I actually recommended them to my daughter. I wanted her to read them, but then when I just flip the pages and just try to read, I mean, I was skimming through the book, but when I read them, I found them so meaningful that I felt you know, there was a compelling force that that urged me to write about Neil Gaiman, to read more about this writer. So I think I've talked enough about these four books. I would like to summarize. Can you still see my slide, the last slide? Can somebody tell me?
Yes, ma'am,
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
visible.
All right. So I would like to conclude by saying, and this is by Gaiman himself, he says, "We who make stories know that we tell lies for a living." Because he's a writer, so obviously what he's writing, of course he wants to gain popularity, and then of course because it is in the market, so pecuniary benefits must can be, I mean should be attached to. So he says that we tell lies for a living, but they are good lies that say true things, and we owe it to our readers to build them as best as we can. Truth can be daunting to children, but truth is life affirming, and children need to hear it, even if it's packaged in fictional stories, which explains why Gothic fairy tales have become pervasive, everlasting, continue to inspire Neil Gaiman's children fiction even today. And I must say, it inspired me too, and I think I belong to the category of adult readership. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation.